One of the biggest tragedies in history led to more than 6 million Jewish people being killed in Europe during World War II by Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. 1.5 million of them were innocent Jewish children. Thousands of families were taken from their homes and forced to attend death marches from concentration camp to concentration camp throughout Eastern Europe. The prisoners of the death marches were starved, dehydrated, and beaten by the guards. They were taken from their homes, put on trains, and deported to deadly torture camps. The Jewish people had their human rights taken from them and had to do things against their will while being held at gunpoint. They brought us into Auschwitz. I could see the chimneys burning and smell the smoke. I did not think about it. They gave us tattoos. 33076. I did not have a name anymore, just a number, said Sarah Polonsky-Zukavitsky, a Holocaust survivor who went through the struggles of the concentration camps and lived through one of the darkest times in world history. In 1939, when the Nazis invaded Poland, Anne Frank and her family fled to Amsterdam, seeking freedom. In 1942, the Franks were forced to hide with a German family in the secret annex house. I don't like being called a hero because no one should ever think you have to be special to help others, said Miep Geiss. Miep Geiss was a German woman who helped Anne and her family survive and thrive through the uncertain time. Miep brought Anne and her family food and all of the resources and necessities that they needed. That same year, Anne was given a diary from her father for her 13th birthday. Each day, Anne documented her days in hiding. She wrote, "Dear Kitty," for every entry of her diary, and she hoped to one day publish it. In 1944, after 2 years in hiding, Anne was found and brought to a concentration camp where she would die at 15 years old due to disease. Miep Geiss went back to the secret annex, retrieved Anne's diary, and brought it to Anne's father, Otto Frank, who had survived the Holocaust and would publish the diary. World War II had impacted so many lives and devastated the Jewish population in Europe. When the world discovered what was happening in the concentration camps, people in many other countries took on the responsibility of helping to free the Jews. On March 1, 1945, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared, "The structure of our world peace cannot be the work of one man or one party or one nation. It must be peace which rests on the cooperative effort of the whole world." The war was affecting people everywhere, and people realized that they needed to step in and help. The rights of these innocent people were demolished. They were taken out of their homes, robbed, beaten, starved, and murdered. When Anne's diary was published, it changed the views of many people and left many distressed. Anne's diary allowed people to see what had really happened through the eyes of someone who was directly affected by it. Over 3 million copies of Anne's diary have been sold, and it has been translated into 70 languages. Her diary is the most famous and commonly read diary in the world. When the diary came out, it expanded more awareness of what happened to the Jews during World War II. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented, said Elie Wiesel, a Holocaust survivor who stood tall and fought for freedom. Long before Hitler came to power, he voluntarily joined the German army and proudly contributed to World War I. Adolf Hitler first tried to run for president on March 3, 1932, losing to Paul von Hindenburg in a close election. Hindenburg's death in 1934 allowed Adolf Hitler to become Chancellor of Nazi Germany with absolute power. Unfortunately, Hitler's ascent to power would mean that the rights of many European Jews would be sacrificed. Once Hitler gained power as a chancellor, he started forming the Nazi Party and implemented numerous racist policies. He targeted the Jews, isolating them in ghettos before eventually sending them to concentration camps. The Nazis had told people that the Jews were inferior, and in order for Germany to thrive, the Jews needed to die. He persuaded people to hate the Jews even though they weren't the problem. He was. Hitler abused his responsibilities as a leader and would trample on the rights of millions of people. The Nazis stated they were going to exterminate all Jews. They treated them like animals. They forced families from their homes, eventually sending them to camps throughout Europe. I was a little girl. I had done nothing to nobody, and I had to go there, remembered Welenissa McCrary, a survivor of the Holocaust. She couldn't understand what the Jews did wrong to have to go through such a tragic time. When the Nazis found the Frank family and their hiding place, they were taken to a concentration camp called Auschwitz, and later that year, Anne and her sister Margot were moved to a concentration camp called Bergen-Belsen. Fresh water was scarce, and their beds were infested with lice. The living conditions were horrible, and soon enough, death knocked on their door. On July 15, 1944, Anne wrote, "It's utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see a world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions, and yet, when I look up to the sky, I somehow feel that everything will change for the better, that this cruelty too will end, that peace and tranquility will return once more. In the meantime, I must hold on to my ideals. Perhaps the day will come when I'll be able to realize them." Anne would die of typhus in February of 1945, just a day after her sister Margot had passed after a fall from her bunk in a weakened state. As the Allied forces moved east, they discovered the atrocities committed by Hitler and the Nazis. The world would never be the same. Otto Frank survived the concentration camps and retrieved Anne's diary from Miep Geiss. He was finally able to publish it in 1947. Anne had always dreamed of getting out of the war and writing her own book about her time in hiding. Thanks to Otto, her dream had come true. Post-war Europe saw the population of Jews and other innocent civilians decrease drastically. Many people had become homeless and several European economies had collapsed. The abuse of human rights during World War II created trauma that would persist for decades to come. Anne Frank's story is known throughout the world and has changed the lives of many. She gave the world a window into one of history's worst tragedies, allowing future generations to realize that each and every human is entitled to individual rights and has a responsibility to recognize and protect the rights of others.